Hello and welcome everybody to this video on object destructuring in JavaScript. First of all, what is object destructuring? It is extracting data from an object and storing it in a variable so that we can use it in our code. Now, the way that we used to do this before ES6 introduced our object destructuring assignment, we would do it this way. We would just create a set of variables and we would access the property in the object for each, putting this in the value position. Then we'd have all of our values stored in these variables like this. But this is not the modern way to do it, and we have a new syntax that provides new features as well. So here is the way that we would do object destructuring today, and this is not just useful for extracting information for objects in the example that I'm showing you in this type of example. It's also very important in object-oriented programming, so you can extract data from objects that are stored there, and as such it's actually essential if you want to be able to use React and other frameworks. So how do we do it? Well, first of all, if we want to create some new variables, we use const, or we can declare a different type of variable, and then we open with brackets and we type the properties that we would like to extract from the object here. So I'm just going to take a few out of there. The title, let's take the thumbnail, and I'm also going to take the author out of there. And then in the value position, we place the object. So we're basically feeding in the value position, we're feeding in the object, and this is going to create these variables here for us. So I'm going to save that and log what each of these that should now be variables to the console. So hopefully this works. Yeah, we've got our title, our thumbnail, and we've also got the author name. And if I sort of uncomment this code, you can see that what we've done here is we've done what took 4 lines of code and could have took more lines of code if we wanted to extract more data out of the object. We've done it in one single line of code. Okay, but it doesn't stop there because there's more things we can do here. A nice feature is we can use the REST syntax. So we use spread operator, and then we don't have to call it REST, but by convention it is often called REST, and this is all of the object that we didn't take from it already. So this should log an object to the console with the remaining properties. So we've got the trailing headline and the story URL there. So this is really sort of destructuring the object in the sense that we've taken this out of the object, and in the new object that we've created, REST, this is all that's left. So it's effectively we've taken out of it, but obviously new story is still available to us if we want to access the original object. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the REST now. There's actually not too much more to object destructuring, but there are some variations that you should know about that are very useful. So the first one I want to show you is, what about you want to change the name of the variable? Let's say you don't want the variable to be called title, even though the property key is title. Well, you can just use a colon and then the variable name you would like afterwards. It's as simple as that. So we go do an abbreviation there. And finally, we'll do an abbreviation of author. Okay, and these should now be the names of our variables. Okay, so we've taken, okay, so there we go, all of the information is there. So we've taken these properties and stored them in the values in variables with a new name so far. Now, what if we want to set a default value for one of the variables? This can be very useful in certain contexts. Let's say, for example, the author property is missing. So let's see what happens if we do nothing. Okay, so we just get an undefined here. So this may not be the behavior that we want. We may not want undefined to be printed. We may want to set a default value. So how would we go about doing that? Well, it's quite simple. All we need to do is specify the value here equals anon. We'll set it to anon. And now when we load our script, we'll see that that value is no longer undefined, it's anon. This only applies when there is no value stored in the object. So if I bring back a name for author, you will see that the default value no longer applies and we're back to Joe Blogs. So you really need to decide whether to have a default value or not on the basis of your website or app, sort of what makes sense. But it's quite often useful to set something for it to avoid the undefined situation. Okay, finally, I want to talk about how we can do this for nested objects. So let's say we have multiple authors. So I'm going to create another level inside this object. So this is now nested, and we're going to have a lead author, and we'll have that again as Joe Blogs, and we'll have a supporting author of Max Muster. And what we can do to destructure this object now, if we want to get into this nested object, we can do that with, we create a new instance of object destructuring. And we're going to pass in, rather than news story, we're going to pass in the news story dot authors, and we can access it that way. So here we have lead author. I'm going to abbreviate that to LA, and supporting author, I'm going to abbreviate that to SA. Abbreviate that to SA. And now this should be available to us as variables, so we should have successfully accessed the nested properties. Let's just check. Okay, so we've got Joe Blogs and Max Muster now as variables. Okay, so that is it for object destructuring assignment. I hope you found this video useful. This way of extracting information is very, very useful in practice when you're working with APIs and you receive data in an object and you want to extract it so you can use it in your code. It's also essential knowledge if you want to go on and use a web framework because they're based on object-oriented programming, and in that context you often need to extract the information from objects so you can use that in your code or in the language of React within your components. So if you did like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you want more updates from us, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Open JavaScript.